Hey YouTube, Prof Sales coming at you with a video, and today's video is about my May results as well as 3 tips for setting goals for your next month. So I thought I would take a few moments to share with you how I did last month, the month of May. It was a very interesting month. At the beginning of the month, I noticed a significant slowdown in my eBay sales. So I decided to pivot and change direction and start spending more time on listing items on Amazon, specifically Amazon FBA. The slowdown in eBay continued for the entire month. I ran down almost 30% versus the month before, which is a really significant drop. But Amazon, on the other hand, had a huge month for me. I more than doubled my best month ever on Amazon. So after the two balanced out, I actually ran up about 18% over my previous month. I set a new record in terms of the sales that I've had since I started reselling in any one particular month. So it really made me think about, how do we set goals? How do we proceed with our business plan given changing business conditions? I'll admit, at the beginning of the month, I was really frustrated when eBay was tanking so badly. But I just decided to change course. I sent in some smalls, as I think I mentioned in a previous video. And of course, I pivoted to FBA with Amazon, and the results were great. And that's sometimes what has to happen in this business. I see so many resellers in the reseller community who get on the reselling forums and pages and complain about their sales, and yet they do and change nothing. Now, that's not to say that you should just change every time your sales take a little dip. Sometimes you have to ride it out. I understood that eBay was seasonal. I sell a lot of clothing, and during the summer months, a lot of the clothing I was selling was not going to sell on eBay. That's not uncommon, but it was the first time I'd experienced it, so I had to make adjustments. My adjustments I made is I started hitting a lot more yard sales, estate sales, doing some retail arbitrage, looking for items on Craigslist and OfferUp and Garage Sale to sell on Amazon, and I was successful at that. So, keep that in mind. You have to change with market conditions, and you cannot just sit back and decide and say, "Oh, woe is me. My platform that I'm selling on is doing horrible now. What I'm selling is not in season. I'm just going to throw my hands up and give up." Change course. Try something new. Learn something new about reselling. Try a different platform, different types of items, what have you. Whatever you need to do to make a change that will impact your business positively. Nothing else, you'll learn something, which is definitely what I learned. I learned a lot about Amazon FBA. I learned a lot about books, which I've been selling and packing up and shipping in and on a pretty steady basis. And it was a great month. I had the most profit I'd ever had in a month as well. My net margin was right around 40%, which is pretty good for what I've been averaging. I definitely want to continue to push that up. But, all in all, it was a great month. I can't complain. It started out rough, but I adjusted, and I think I made the right decision. So today I want to talk about what you do when you set goals for your reselling business. And I wanted to give you 3 tips when it comes to setting goals that I have found are, they're very simple and they're commonsensical, but at the same time, I think a lot of us don't do it. We get so caught up in the minutia of what we're doing every day, we forget to look at, the big picture in terms of our strategy. We're always more focused on tactics, the day-to-day. I'm going to list this, I'm going to pack and ship that, I'm going to source over here, I'm going to source over there. Instead of spending a little bit of time to think about, well, what are our overall goals for this month or this quarter or this year? So let's talk about 3 tips that you can use to set goals. The first tip I want to say is to make it specific. So what do I mean by that? I see resellers, again, in the reselling community that say things like, next month, I want to have better sales. That's meaningless. Suppose this month you sold $1,000 worth of items. You had $1,000 in sales. And next month you had $1,001. Well, you increased your sales, but would you call that a success? I don't think anyone would call that a success. They would call that basically you did the same thing as you did the month before. So you need to come up with specific goals. Now these can be goals in terms of not just the sales. You could say, hey, I did 1,000 last month. This month I want to do 1,500. And then you can start breaking out the tactics for how you're going to get there. Listings, sourcings, whatever. You can also break it out in terms of percentages. I want to run up 20% from what I did last month. I want to source 10% more product in this category. That's a specific goal, very specific, because you're going to know how many you did in the previous month. So you can look at the new month and say, well, I sourced 50 items last month, so this month I want to source at least 60. And you know that that'll lead to a little more listings and shippings and so on and more sales. But make specific goals. Write them down, post them beside your computer. I'm in the process of making my goals for June, even though this is June 2nd, I'm a little behind. But I always like to see where a month finishes out before I set the goals for the next month. So I should have those done by the end of the day. But they're going to be specific goals, do this percentage here, run up this amount, source this amount. They can be goals like getting ungated in a category. That's something that my mentor, Jason Clark, has been pushing me to do. Hey, get ungated, get ungated. I did manage to get ungated in one category last month, but I really need to get ungated in some other categories this month. So that's going to be a specific goal for me this month. So specific goals is the first tip to setting goals for your reselling business. The other thing I would say is you need to make these goals relational. And what do I mean by that? Well, they need to relate to your situation. Let's say, for instance, that in the month of May, you sold $1,000 worth of items on eBay. And it generated $350 of profit, 35% net margin. Well, you can take some of that money and you can save some for taxes. You can use some to pay some bills, savings, but you can also put some of it back in your business. But let's say you start next month with $1,350. Let's just say you put it all back in your business. You start the next month with $1,350 budget to spend on sourcing. Is it likely that last month, doing $1,000, that this month you're going to take $1,350 and go do $10,000 in sales? That's not realistic. That may be, you need to make a goal that relates to your situation and is reasonable to your situation, and also relates to how much time you have to do this. This may be a part-time endeavor, it may be full-time. What sort of strategy you're using. Maybe you need to spend more time sourcing. If you spend more time sourcing, by definition, you have less time for other things like listing, shipping, packing, photographs, research. So you need to think about that time bucket that you have. You have this bucket of time each month, and how are you going to use that bucket? Where are you going to pour that bucket out at? Into what areas of your reselling business? Are you going to pour more of that bucket out into sourcing? Are you going to pour more out into listing? Are you going to pour more down into research? More into training yourself? Whatever it is, it has to be relational to your specific situation. It can't be so sky high of a goal that it doesn't make sense. Because if you do that, you're going to be continually disappointed. It's not going to be realistic. If you know you can only spend 10 hours a week on your reselling business, and you say that next month you're going to spend 30 hours a week, well, where are those additional 20 hours going to come from? You were spending those additional 20 hours doing something. So that means whatever it was you were doing before is no longer going to get done because you're going to put into reselling. That may be an appropriate goal for you, but think about keeping your goal relational to your specific situation. And the third tip is to make sure that you stretch yourself. Stretch. And this is important, and it ties back to the relational goal tip I just gave you. But this is important in the sense that, again, if your sales were $1,000 and you say next month I want to do $1,010, that's not really a stretch. That's not really hard to do. That's not going to challenge you as a reseller. It's not going to help you build your business. And it's not really going to motivate you. It needs to be a reasonable goal, but it also needs to be one that's a little difficult to get to. If you know, for instance, that you can spend 10 hours a week on sourcing, well, maybe next month you can spend 15 hours. That's 50% more. Maybe that's enough of a stretch. 5 hours is probably an additional day or half a day during the week. So that may be an appropriate stretch goal. 30 hours would be a big change. Going from 10 hours to 30 hours is a huge difference, and you would need to really reschedule or change your schedule quite a bit. On the other hand, if you did 10 hours of sourcing a week last month and this month you want to do 11, that's not much of a stretch. That's not really going to challenge you. An extra hour, I mean, you could spend that in traffic. So make it a stretch goal, obtainable, but not easily obtainable. Not so easy that you could do it with your eyes closed and your hands behind your back. It's important to stretch yourself so that you can continue to grow and evolve as a reseller, and make sure that you're putting enough challenge into your efforts to make it worthwhile. To be able to say at the end of the month, hey, last month I did $2,000 in sales, and I stretched this month to do $2,800, and I did $2,850. That's great. You hit it. That's a big jump up. That's 40%. On the other hand, if you did 2,000 sales one month and you said next month I want to do 2,800, you did 2,700, that's still good. You got really close. You stretched, you pushed yourself, and you got really close. You know, there's that old saying that says aim for the stars, and even if you miss, you still get pretty high. And there's a lot of truth to that. That's what stretch goals are. Businesses set these all the time, and it's important that you think about your reselling business in the same sort of mindset that, you know, a large corporation would. There's stretch goals, things that are going to be a challenge. And if you don't get all the way there, you still got somewhere. You got pretty far, maybe. That's great. It's going to be motivating for you, and the next month is going to be even easier to get that motivation for what you want to do. So specific, relational, and stretch goals. 3 tips for setting goals, specific, relational, and stretch. 3 specific ways you can think about your goals for the month of June and beyond. So I hope this video was helpful to you. If you liked it, please hit the like button. That's how YouTube decides what videos are shown, and I would really appreciate it. Of course, leave me a comment. I try to answer every single one of them. And consider subscribing to Prof Sales so that you're going to get a notification every time a new video comes out, like this one. And I will be seeing you very shortly with another video, hopefully in the very near future. And until next time, this is Prof Sales saying good sales to you.